Okay, welcome everybody to the webinar today. We're excited to have you here. Our webinar today is Agile Secret Sauce. You don't have to be agile to leverage its great ideas. And before I get started, let me double check that I am recording.
I've got a red button on.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Kevin. All right. Okay, so just a little bit of housekeeping. Hopefully everybody on this webinar is familiar with Zoom. So we do ask you to participate. So down at the bottom, you'll be able to see a chat icon. So we do want you to chat in, let us know where you're from, where you're joining us today. If you've been on our other webinars, welcome back. So please just everyone go ahead and find that chat function and go ahead and chat in where you're from. The other part here is Q&A. So again, chat is for us to all kind of collaborate together and just talk amongst ourselves as we go through this webinar. And then Q&A is what Kevin and I will be monitoring. So that way, if we have questions throughout the webinar, we're able to answer those. So again, chat in, feel free to communicate that way. For questions, please go ahead and use the Q&A function. All right, so today's agenda, we're going to, of course, meet the presenters. Then we're going to talk about building a strong foundation on the key Agile elements. And then we're going to dive into each of those elements a little bit deeper. So we're going to talk about smaller bites, connecting with customers, the power of teams, and continual learning. Okay, so a little bit about Colme Group. Today's webinar is hosted by Colme Group, and we are a project and portfolio management consultancy specializing in PPM onboarding, PMO maturity, agile transformation, and OCM initiatives. We are based here in Phoenix, Arizona, and we have offices globally. We have team members in 11 time zones from Hawaii to the Netherlands, and those of you that are familiar with Clarizen, we are actually one of their preferred partners, and we provide admin and partner training through Colme University, as well as professional services to new and existing Clarizen champions. Okay, so let's meet our presenters. Kevin, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
All right, thanks, Corey. So my name's Kevin Jacobs, and like a lot of you, I probably love project management way too much. I actually did a doctoral degree in project management, and I've been in the field for 20 years in project management, business analysis, solution architecture. One of my last stints was I spent 6 years as the PMO manager for a Fortune 200 company. And while I was there, I designed my own PMP course and taught it for 5 years. So I understand the traditional world. But while I was there, I also got introduced to Agile, and I just love the principles from the beginning. I feel like they fit in really well. I've led a number of Agile transformations, both there and at other companies, and it's just a lot of fun to look at them.
All right, thanks, Kevin. So I am Cornelia, but I go by Corey. So as Kevin talks about Corey through this webinar, he's referring to me. I have been a PM for going on a decade. I've been working on projects in IT, professional services, higher education, and marketing. I am a certified project management professional, so I have my PMP. I'm also a professional Scrum Master and a ProSci certified change practitioner. So you could say I am a PM nerd, and I love all things project management, including how to leverage Agile. Kevin and I are active on social media, so I wanted to throw the icons up here just as a reminder. We invite you to connect with us on LinkedIn. Colme Group also has an active Twitter and YouTube channel, which we will be posting a replay of this webinar on our YouTube channel, so please go there and like it. And all right, so let's get to the real reason everyone is here today, how to use the best elements of Agile.
So we talk a lot about Agile, and when we do that, a lot of times we get lost in the details, like how long are your sprints or how your daily scrum's going. And when we do that, it's important to remember that as an organization, there's just no individual practice is going to give you a competitive advantage. If there was, everybody would do it and there's no advantage. Your ability to deliver value to your customers depends on your culture. And so that secret of you finding success is finding the right practices and customizing them that's going to fit into your world. And that customization is what's going to give you an advantage over everybody else, because there's nobody else who's going to be just like you. So what we really want to do today is we want to help you understand the principles, and that way you can figure out, like, how do I implement them in my world? So today we're going to talk about what Agile provides with companies, that, like, what is that advantage, that competitive advantage? You know, what is it that makes us different when we use Agile? And we're going to be borrowing from design thinking. I'm going to borrow from lean product management, and we'll be stealing good ideas wherever we can get them. As we go through each one, we're going to talk about what the principle is, how you implement it, and then why it benefits the organization, the customers, and the teams. So the key thing about this, as you look at this, not every principle necessarily fits into your company, and that's okay. What I really want us to have is, as project managers, we should have a toolkit, and I want to show you the different tools and how you can use them. So you can think about, in this situation, what are the best ones? Or for my organization, what's the things that really add value to me? So as we go through these, the first one we're going to be talking about is smaller bites. If you're familiar with Agile, like this is a familiar one, breaking projects into smaller pieces. The next one is connecting with customers. As project managers, we've always connected with customers, or business analysts asking for requirements, but we're seeing some different tools that help us connect with them in a much better way instead of just asking them what they want. We're going to be talking about teams, which is an interesting topic because we talk a lot about teams. We use that word loosely, but we're going to talk about really what makes a team and what's the advantage of a good one. And then I talked a lot about learning. My favorite is continual learning. We'll be talking about, the world is changing quickly. And so what is it? How do we build that learning into our organization so we can adjust and do what we need to be able to serve customers better?
Those all sound really awesome. I like that you mentioned we can take different components of each to fit what works best for our organization. So often when we think about Agile, we only think about the ceremonies and the roles. Do you have a daily Scrum? Do you have a Scrum Master? This concept of the four main principles is what really got my attention when we started working together, Kevin. And it finally clicked with me that Agile is a mindset. So what about these smaller bites? Let's hear more about that.
Yeah, so this one's a little bit interesting. It's kind of controversial. So I talk to a lot of companies, and oftentimes the first thing they're saying is, oh, well, we can't be Agile because our work doesn't break up. So when teams talk about Agile and why they can't do it, this is the number one reason why people say, oh, I can't do that. So what I want to talk about today is where it does work and kind of like what it is. So every project that we do, we really have three questions that we need to answer before we even start the project. And the first of those is it valuable? So if I do this, are people going to buy it? Or if I'm doing it internally, is it going to add value to my organization? The next one, is it usable? So I'm going to build it and somebody bought it, but is it going to be easy to use? Are people going to implement it? Because they might buy it, and then if it isn't usable, it's not going to go anywhere. The last one, is it viable? So we see this with, people talk about flying cars, and that sounds great, but how do we actually build them? Like, can we do this? So the question of viability is, can we do it? And can we do it for the right price that people will actually pay for it? So if you think about traditional projects, that's how we build a project. So we've done things before. And so we look at the question. If you think about like building a bridge, I can think about, all right, where are cars driving today? If I build a bridge, how many cars are going to use the bridge? How much time will it take out of their commute? What materials and processes do I need? I've done it before, so I've got an idea of how I do it. I'm going to be guessing a little bit here, but we're going to be in the ballpark. It's going to be okay. That's the good news about traditional projects that we've done before. The bad news is that they don't break up well. Like if I'm building a 4-lane highway across a road as a bridge to add, I'm not going to start by throwing a rope over the river and building a rope bridge and see who can. That doesn't do me any good. This project doesn't add value till it's done. And it's interesting because as we talk about traditional project management, we took that same idea that we've gotten from construction and we put it everywhere else. We treat software, marketing, business design projects all the same way, and they're really different than construction. So let's talk about why they're different, and they're actually different in opposite ways. So the first thing is that a bridge, I've done it lots of times, house, same thing. New business process, I've never changed a business process this way in this company before, so it's brand new. So it's not something I can just down at the beginning and say, here's what the perfect picture looks like. There's a lot less certainty around, is it going to add value? Are people going to like it? Can we even do it? But the good news is that I can break it up. I can do a little bit of testing and find out, would this work? Like I can build some experiments to see, am I headed in the right direction? When we build those experiments, the big thing we want to do is we want to think about like, what is the right bite? What is the question I want to answer, and how am I going to do it?
I like the 3 small bites, Kevin. That's awesome. Is it valuable? Is it usable? Is it viable? We have used this when we implement our projects with the MVP, and it's not most valuable player. It's actually a little bit more the opposite. It's minimal viable product, because we can spend months and months crafting a robust design, but it's often a better approach to do it iteratively. Setting aside software projects, I've seen success used with proof of concept projects, an homage to Field of Dreams. If you build it, he will come. Sometimes we need to take that first step, that first bite, rather than trying to figure out that whole elephant and losing the momentum. We should start with the MVP, refine it, and continue to move forward. So Kevin, how do we think of these smaller bites?
Yeah, no, I love that commentary on the MVP, and we really need to think about what that is. And that's where this question about how to think in smaller bites comes from. And I'm going to give you a real life example of how we break this elephant into smaller bites. No offense to the poor elephants who's getting eaten. So I had a company that I worked with that had this hypothesis. So it was the HR department coming to IT, and they had this brilliant idea that they were paying really generous benefits to the employees. It was like over $20,000 a year that it cost. And they're having a problem with turnover, and they decided that this was the solution. So the hypothesis they had was that, one, if employees knew that they were paying them $20,000, if their benefits cost $20,000 a year, they'd be like really excited about that. That would make them really happy. And being really happy, that would reduce the amount of turnover. And the last hypothesis was that we know where all these benefits are, we know where all the information is, we can get it, and we can find it a way to show it to employees in a really simple way. Now, after the fact, when I put it in those terms, you realize that you're making some assumptions here. Like you don't know the answer to that. So let's talk about some of the assumptions that they're making with that. So the first thing is that knowing my benefits is going to make me more satisfied. Maybe, maybe not, but there's an easy way that we could test this. So for example, we could grab a couple employees and we could go look at, go find out what their benefits are and show it to them and see how they feel about it. Like, do they get excited? Are they happy to be with the company? Do they see value in this? And obviously we want to start with what we think is the biggest benefit, but during that question, we'd find out more about how they feel about their benefits. So not only does it test our hypothesis, it's going to point us in the right direction. The next big question is it going to reduce turnover? And that one's hard. Like to really test it, you'd want to show everybody their benefits and just see if people stop leaving or if less people left. So that's kind of a hard one to test. But what we could do is that we're having exit interviews anyway when people are leaving. So we could kind of weave this in. As people are leaving, we could talk about, did you know how much your benefits were? How do you feel about that? What are the benefits like at the next company? Do you know? So at least we get a little bit of a feel of how this plays in. And more importantly, what other reasons are playing in of why they're leaving so that we can really get to the core problem that we're trying to get. It's not about telling people about benefits. What the company really wants is less turnover. That last one is important. And when customers come to you, they're not thinking about, can you do it or not? But as those of us delivering it, we absolutely are. So we need to test how hard it is to find this. It would be good to go start finding out, where's the data stored? How hard is it? Do we have access to databases? Or is it in the data warehouse? How would we want to think about showing this to people so it's going to be in a form that they can understand.
That's a really interesting example and one that spans many types of industries. What did you find with their use case?
So I wish this was a good story about how everything worked well, but it's not. It's an example of probably what not to do. The company went ahead and moved forward. They were wholehearted that this is going to make a difference. They invested a lot of time. At the end of the day, I don't really think it did much for benefits. It was interesting for people to see, but I don't think it had a huge impact on turnover. And because of that, I feel like they wasted a lot of time working on it.
Right. So what would you say the benefits of breaking up pieces into smaller bites is then?
All right. So this is a great example because I talk about what they wasted their time on. For an organization, you have limited resources and you can't be spending time. The time you spend on the wrong projects means that you're not doing the right ones. So I think every one of us have been in that project where we go deliver it to the customer and they look at us and they're like, oh, now I know what I want. That's a horrible thing to hear at the end of a project that like we worked so hard and then we didn't hit the mark. And so spending time getting this right and breaking it up into smaller pieces helps you get that right from the beginning. A couple of other advantages on one of these is that when you break it up, you deliver something small to the customer that they can start using now. We've all been on those projects that get canceled halfway through. Funding runs out or they get put on hold. When you do this, it means that you've given something to the customer so you don't lose the whole project. They're getting to use something in the meantime. And the last really big one for organizations is that we really work hard on project visibility. And when you are delivering something every couple of weeks, even if it's not a finished good, but you say, I'm going to do this for the next 2 weeks, and then you can see it at the end, it really helps get rid of those watermelon projects that are nice and pretty green on the outside, but kind of red in the middle. For customers, the big benefit is risk. And we're going to talk about a couple of different places, but as a customer, you're asking me at the beginning of the project to sign off on something I'm not really sure about. And when you can give it to me in pieces, then I'm not responsible for us being wrong at the end. Another big one is value. We talked about projects getting cut off in the middle. I get to use something if my project gets canceled for any reason. And the biggest one is that as we're working together, it's a better solution. And again, we're going to talk about that in a couple of places, but when you can build something, deliver it and test it and see it, you're going to come up with something better because you're getting feedback throughout the process. Last one here is teams. Again, we've been all been on those projects. It's 6-month project. First month or two is a little slow as we get our feet off the ground. And then month 3 and 4 get busy. And month 5 and 6, our family might just wonder where we went to because it's so crazy. Breaking these into smaller projects means it smooths it out. You're busy the whole way, but it's not overwhelming. And you're not trying to do everything at once. Traditionally on a project, you might have 5 or 6 different things you're working on. It really helps us say, we're focusing on this, we're going to get it done, and we can see what we're doing. It stops the time switching. And again, the last one for that project that get on hold or get canceled, as a team member, you put a lot of work into it, and then they just throw it out when they cancel your project. So getting to deliver something to the customer means that you don't lose that value. You still feel like your work made a difference.
I think I'm sold on this one. Faster ROI, faster value, and less plates in the air, count me in. And let's be honest, we all love encouragement, especially when it's coupled with instant gratification, which, Kevin, it's been scientifically proven to tap into the reward center of our brains and provide positive reinforcement. Hello, dopamine. These small bites will keep us moving forward with excitement to the next prioritized item. Okay, so we talked about smaller bites. What's the next agile element we should look at?
Yeah. Let's talk about connecting with customers, and we're going to lean on your dopamine there and how much value it has of feeling good as we connect the people we work with. So when I first came to Agile, I had this epiphany. So as a business analyst, as a solution architect, I'd spend a lot of time getting sign off from customers. And we talked about with smaller bites about how much that risk feels when you're signing the paper and you're not really sure what you're signing. The truth is that when we do these software projects or marketing projects or business solution designs, It's a little bit like art. If you're trying to tell somebody what a Monet looks like or why you love a Van Gogh, you can't communicate what they can see. Like when you see it, you can just feel it. And so customers don't know what they want. They know that they hurt. And when you give them the right answer, they can feel it, but they don't know how to get there. And that's the good news. Okay, so we got customers who understand what they want and they understand what good looks like and what bad looks like. The other side of this is your development team, and they're the experts on breaking problems up and understanding what the root causes are and seeing what the technology can do. So what you want to do is you really want to bring these two teams together with what's possible and how do we find the root cause and what does good look like and what does bad look like. And when we put that together, we get much better solutions. Now, we're trying to do that today. Like we do wireframes and we try to walk people through the application, but it's hard for people to really see what's going on if you can't put the hands on keyboard and see what it looks like on the screen. Or with a marketing campaign, being able to see like, what's this commercial going to look like?
Mm-hmm. I think that's an awesome epiphany. Wireframes, they can help, but they're really hard to conceptualize, like you mentioned, the end product. And to your point, the customer may not have a clear picture of what they wanted until they see it. I had the opportunity to work with a website developer, and he mentioned, you have never been so humbled until you have a customer navigate your website. Well, what if we flip that around and think, instead of assuming how a customer interacts with our product, what if we involve them from the beginning? So how, Kevin, would you recommend that we connect with our customers?
Yeah, that's really important. And like anybody who's sat with a customer, like we spend so much time developing it that we know it intimately, like everything you would do, and then you hand it to the customer, and they're like, I don't get it because I just saw it. So
Right.
the first thing we've got to do is we've got to get them in the same room. And I know it's COVID. Nobody's in the same room anymore. Virtual rooms work, Zoom meetings work, but you've got to get people talking to each other. I think there's times that we treat technical people as like these hermits that we don't dare talk to them because we got to be able to talk to the customer. And it's okay. Your technical teams can do that and they're going to love it. The holy grail is when you can have a team just sit and watch somebody and how they do it today. You can have hundreds of hours or weeks of time spent on requirements gathering, trying to get all the details. When you sit back and watch somebody do the job, it's like a picture being 1,000 words. Now, as we do that, we got to make sure we're talking to the right people. If you're talking to managers or super users, you're designing for those people. You're not designing for the people who are going to put those fingers on keyboards. So you want to talk to the people who are really going to use the system. And we talked about breaking projects up. That's not always possible. Some of the big projects, we can't do that. But if you can't break the project up, maybe we can do it in iterations, or we can get feedback throughout the process. When you build a house, you don't build foundation, kitchen, roof, and then do the bedroom, But when you buy a house and you build it, even when they do the foundation, that you do walkthroughs and you can see kind of how it's laying out. And as the house progresses, you get a better idea. They've got models that you can look at so you can kind of feel how things are going to go together. What we want to do is just find ways that we can connect the customers with what we're doing and what we're thinking in ways they're going to understand.
Mm-hmm. I worked at a place that they actually had a dedicated corporate ethnography department. I always stumble over that word. But it was basically where they would send in product managers to shadow the customers for a few days. It was incredible, and they found solutions to problems they didn't even realize the customer was having. In one case, they were able to see an account receivable person have a stack full of receipts on their desk to reconcile them, and the light bulb went off about machine readable receipts that are automatically sent to the system, and the account person just has to quickly verify the information rather than hand entering it. In another example, they followed a customer and he had a call while he was driving. He literally reached back to his back seat, took the call, wrote some notes on a random piece of paper, threw it in his front seat. And then a few months later, the product managers followed up with him and they said, "Hey, what happened with that call and that piece of paper that you got?" And he said he lost the paper, which also means he lost that lead, lost that customer, that opportunity. So they developed a feature that when he ended the call, a notification would pop up and he would just hit one button for him to autosave the client, speak his notes, and have a better follow-up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, like as a salesperson, you can imagine how much more useful that would be. But sitting in a room with a computer in front of your desk, you don't know that until you see the people. So in his book, Joy Inc., if you guys haven't read it, it's by Menlo, and he talks about cultural anthropologists instead of business analysts or solution architects. And I like that term because what we are trying to do is we're trying to understand somebody else in their native environment. And we need to realize that they think differently than the way we do.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to lobby that some of our titles get changed to cultural anthropologist. Some people say they prefer cultural engineers.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, go ahead.
No, like whatever you call them, we need to think carefully. Like words matter, and we need to think about like how we're thinking about what our jobs and what we're doing.
Exactly. Okay, so I can see how connecting with the customer has some really great benefits. Why don't you share those with us?
Yeah, so let's start with the customers on this one. The nice thing about working with the developers is when you work with them directly, they see the right problem and you solve the right problem. We talk a lot about 80% of features being seldomly or never used. That's a lot of stuff I have to wade through as a customer. And it makes it really nice when you can see what I want and you give me just what I want. It's where Apple got really big is because of the simplicity. They just gave people what they wanted. For organizations, it's about effectiveness. A lot of organizations come in and they want to talk about efficiency. Like, tell me how much faster you're going to get the work done. And the truth is that I don't care how many lines of code you write an hour. What I really want to know is, did you deliver the right solution to the customer and how much did it cost? When you spend time talking to the customer and talking with each other and finding innovative solutions, it's not going to feel efficient, and it's not. But at the end of the day, it's a lot more effective and you find really great answers. And that's what makes a difference. So we've got to take the time to get people working together, just having faith that it's going to work better. So finally, as a team, you spend less time trying to document everything exactly what they said and missing half of it. And then you get the documents over and trying to decipher, not just what they said, but what do they mean? Like, what do they really care about? The conversation is so much easier about that, especially if you can have those conversations throughout the projects. And what it does is it connects people with who they're serving. We all want to help. Going back to your dopamine conversation, that feeling, that good feeling, we want to connect with the people that we're working with.
I definitely think that's the icing on the cake, problem solving and customer service. All right, so we've covered breaking items into smaller pieces. We've covered connecting with your customers. What's the next agile element we should be looking at?
See, this one's a favorite of mine. It's the power of teams. And I love this because as kids, I think everybody, if you really asked what you wanted to be when you grew up, you wanted to be a superhero. And the beautiful thing is teams give ordinary people the ability to be a superhero, to be really uncommon. For any of you who haven't read Sutherland's book about Scrum, Twice the Work in Half the Time, I would recommend it. It's a great book. But one of the things he talks about in that book is that when you look at individual performers, the difference between somebody who's really bad and really good is 10 times. So if the bad person's doing 1 widget an hour, the really good person is doing 10 widgets an hour. Well, 10 times better. That sounds pretty good until you hear about teams. And with teams, it's 2,000 times. And I don't know about you, but when you say 2,000 widgets an hour, to me, that sounds like a superhero. The problem here is that we talk about teams, but we usually don't have real teams. What we have is a group of people who are working a similar project, and we have a manager saying, you do this, you do that, where are you at, how's it going? That's not a team. What makes that group of people a team is a common goal. It's when we let go of what's important to me and each of us say what's important to us. And when you do that, you can leverage the intelligence of the group. We can let our hair down and we can really change what we're doing. In his book, Turn the Ship Around, David Marquette, who's a captain, talks about that he was coming into a submarine, and traditionally in the Navy, the submarine captain tells everybody what to do. 140 people on the submarine, captain has to approve everything. And he came in and he really got everybody involved with thinking for themselves and understanding what they were doing and harness their collective intelligence. And when he did that, his submarine outperformed every submarine in the fleet, and they received the best marks ever. And he talks about it was easy because no matter how brilliant you are as a captain, you are never going to be as smart as 140 sailors who are dedicated to making your team a success.
Kevin, this one speaks directly to me and my inner child that grew up watching Captain Planet. With our powers combined.
I love that.
My team is definitely getting a little sick of me throwing this GIF out and this picture out all the time, but I just believe it. Every time that we work together as a team, it is incredible. But on a more serious note, I think changing the way we work with COVID has helped propel the advantages of working with teams, especially when it comes to expanding who we interact with geographically. At Coley Group, I mentioned in the beginning that we span 11 time zones and multiple countries. Even my colleagues that work out of state, they've challenged me to think differently because of their region, their culture, and the background that they have that is different than mine. And this is definitely where it's always better to work with a team, to have diversity rather than sitting alone, siloed in your non-diverse viewpoint. All right, so why don't you share about how we harness this power?
So we talked a little bit about that, going from me to us, which is really important. And for those of you who are familiar with Project Aristotle, it's going to be old news, but for those who aren't, Google did a project a while back called Project Aristotle, and they were interested in what makes really great teams. And of course, we all know that what makes a really great team is a really great superstar. So they started by studying superstars. And it turns out we're all wrong. There was no correlation between superstars and really great teams. So they took a step back and started to look at these teams and say, you know, what is it that the teams have in common so we can start to see what does correlate to success. And they came up with these 5 things. And the first one is really heavy, and it is psychological safety. So when you let go of that me to us, one of the things you let go of is the politicking and the backbiting and, you know, worrying about looking better than everybody else. And when you do that, people can start to let their hair down and ask questions that they normally wouldn't ask that might sound dumb, or they can suggest ideas that are kind of off the wall and nobody's going to laugh at them. The truth is that when we are doing something new, those odd questions or those odd ideas often will lead us to really innovative solutions. And we've got to be able to do that. But to do that, we have to feel safe. I have to feel like my team has my back and I can be silly and goofy and me, and it's okay. The next one's dependability, and this one's easy. We've all been on a project where somebody didn't pull their slack, and it just sucks. It kills morale. Like, I'm working really hard so that he can go goof off and take the benefits of my work. It's not fun. And what happens is it brings everybody down. Everybody kind of quits working as hard. Next one's structure and clarity. Teams are brilliant, but if you don't give them some good structure, they can spin. Like, they can spend a lot of time fighting about what are we going to do and how are we going to do it, who's in charge, how are we going to vote, how are we going to make decisions. For management, I think giving people a good environment where you walk in and say, all right, here's how we're going to make the decisions. Here's how your decisions are going to be used. It really makes a difference of letting them focus on what's really important, which is what's the problem that I'm going to go solve, and go talk about that. That's where you want to focus your energy. Meaning of work and impact of work are kind of close. So I had to kind of deep dive into these ones to really understand the difference. Meaning of work is we want to feel like we like what we do. And for me, the zone is where this really helps. So when you feel like you're doing a job and you just love it, like you're just absorbed and you can't wait to get back to do work because you love what you're doing, that's the meaning of work. Impact of work is you love what it does for others. So what I'm doing makes a difference. And we talked about this a couple of times of having that connecting with customers and seeing the visibility and small projects to see the visibility. And we're going to talk about it in continual learning about seeing that visibility. That impact of work is really important because it connects us. It gives our work meaning. And just, we go home just feeling great at the end of the day.
Kevin, you mentioned psychological safety, and I have to say this is one of the most valuable things I have encountered working on a team. And I'm glad that you mentioned its importance. It really does encourage high performing teams, and it's just so valuable. I liken it to when you get home, you want to put your comfortable clothes on, take off your shoes, and just be yourself. You don't want to have to tiptoe around and spend the extra energy of keeping up appearances. You can be vulnerable with your thoughts, to think things through, mull it over, troubleshoot, however you process things. And knowing that you have that psychological safety at work allows you to collaborate with your team to solve problems. So
Yeah, no,
thanks.
and I was going to say, like, the great thing about that is that, like, it really changes the way we work. But the bad thing about it is that when you lose it, it's hard. Because when you lose safety, nobody's going to tell you and say, I don't feel safe, because I don't
Mhm.
feel safe enough to do it. So it's really dangerous.
Right. Okay, so we know we need to harness the power of teams. Why don't you tell us some of the benefits about it?
So as we're looking at, let's start with the teams themselves. When you're on a team and you look at motivational models, and I don't care whether you call it self-actualization or achievement, or there's just a joy in being part of something great. When you're in that 2000 times team that really is knocking it out of the ballpark, that just feels awesome. Organization, obviously, you get a lot more success. I mean, these teams are performing a lot better. You're getting innovative solutions. The other advantages to an organization, however, is that when you have a good team working together, they take a lot of the administrative tasks that you normally would have a manager telling everybody what to do and tracking it. The team's doing that themselves. So it frees up the manager to kind of step back and start working on coaching or thinking strategically of how we improve the organization. There's some really big advantages there. And the last piece for an organization that's really big is we've all been an organization where there's that one person who's the superhero. Like, if they walked out of the building, I don't know what we would do. The beauty of a team is we're all working together and we're all doing it together. So the work is a lot more visible. So we don't have that worry of no, nobody can ever go on vacation. For customers, like what teams do is they find really incredible innovations. And so as a customer, you get to see the benefits of those innovations and we get.
I am feeling the heartstrings on this. There is something to be said about a great team. That's one thing that I think working remote has helped improve is the access to more people with different experiences rather than those that you sat close to in proximity at, your office. I mentioned this before about diversity, but even though we are physically apart, there are great opportunities to connect with team members via Slack, Microsoft Teams, so that way that we can continue to mind meld and connect to be greater than just ourselves.
No, that's a really great point. Do you have any examples of something you've learned from someone during the pandemic?
Um, you know, Again, because the power of Zoom, I have seen inside people's basements, their living rooms, guest rooms, dens, and honestly, I sit here today in my craft room slash home office. I have met coworkers and customers' pets and even their children. So I think what I have learned the most is that we are all just human beings capable of adapting and flexing our situations to different ways of working and trying our best to continue to achieve great things together, even if it's remotely as we sit at our dining room table.
Yeah, I know. I think that one of the benefits we've seen out of this whole pandemic is this connection with each other. I hope we don't lose that as we go back.
Exactly. Okay, so smaller bites, check. Connecting with customers, check. Teams, check. What would you say is our last agile element?
Yeah. So I mentioned this at the beginning, continual learning. I'm just one of those people that curious. I love to be learning things new. So this is one of my favorite things. And we talk about the world constantly moving and we talk about it in a negative way, like we're always having to change and we're always having to adjust. But The truth is that we are seeing solutions and ideas that we've never imagined before, and it's changing what we can do at work. And I talked at the beginning that we leverage other people's ideas. We should all be looking at how do we take the ideas of other people and how to use them better. Because you can ask Sears or Toys R Us, if we are not learning and adjusting to our environment, somebody else is going to do that, and they will eat our lunch. The problem that we have is that our structures today are not built for learning. They're built for control. Like the bureaucracies and the hierarchies that we have, we're really focused on a different world where the tasks we were doing were the same tasks all the time, and we needed efficiency and we needed stability so that we can make sure that we were working as quickly as possible. But that doesn't work today. We're not doing the same thing over and over. We automated those tasks, or if not, we're working on doing it. That means that we add values when we're looking at a problem that's never been solved before. And so if we're going to build an environment where people are really innovative and thinking about what they can do better, we need to create companies of entrepreneurs. We want to build an environment where we get experimentation and innovation, and it's just a part of the organization. I talked about that competitive advantage. When you build this into your culture, it really adds that competitive advantage, and you get good ideas, and it doesn't matter where they originate. They get the attention they deserve.
Very true. And this takes me back to studying for the PMP, where we learned about McGregor's theory X and theory Y.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you that aren't familiar with this, it's suggesting that there's two aspects of human behavior at work. I'm paraphrasing here, but basically the assumption of theory X is that on average, employees naturally do not like work, they try to escape it whenever possible, and they need a lot of direction. They generally dislike responsibilities, they resist change, and they need formal direction. On the other hand, assumptions of theory Y is that employees like work. We are able to use self-direction and self-control to perform the work. We have the skills and the capabilities, and our capabilities should be fully utilized. If the job is rewarding and satisfying, then it will result in employees' loyalty and commitment to the organization. And I've worked at places that saw employees with both lenses. In the theory X employer, they actually would withhold information about cost of goods sold because they expected that the employees would use that knowledge to try and petition for higher wages. But if we look at it from a theory Y perspective, those employees could have understood how they directly influence those cost of goods sold, and they might have been able to even offer opportunities in how to make the work more efficient, ways that the owner would have never even thought about since they're not on the front lines. All right, so tell us a little bit more about how we can provide continual learning.
Yeah, I know. I love that example of the theory X and theory Y, and helping employees understand why. And that's what we're going to start out with here too. I'm going to harness my inner Simon Sinek, and we're going to start with why. Learning is hard. Like, we are all so overwhelmed with putting out fires and getting our work done, and taking time to step back and ask, what are we doing? How do we do it better? Is there a better way? Takes effort. So if we're going to do this, leaders need to explain, what are the benefits to the organization, to customers, to you personally as an employee of doing this? We've got to be able to get that purpose across. And then on top of that purpose, we've got to build it into the culture. Psychological safety plays a big part of this, because we need to be able to reward people and recognize people who are doing well, but we also need to make it okay to fail. Like, it's got to be all right for me to have a dumb idea, or to just, can I try this? The best ideas are going to come from those people who are doing the work on the front lines, the people interacting with customers, they're people with hands on keyboards. And so we need to create this environment where no matter where the idea came from, we can look at it. Not all of them are going to be good ideas. The secret to a lot of great ideas is a lot of bad ones too. But we have a way of measuring those and challenging them and seeing, what really works. And the last part is about entrepreneurs. So we want entrepreneurs, we need to give a little bit back. It's nice to feel good that you did a good job, but it's even nicer when you get to take some of the benefits home with you. So we all have bonus structures. We need to think about, how do we build into that bonus structures to reward teams that are really effective at what they do?
Hmm. There's a quote that I see floated around on LinkedIn and social media, and it's by Steve Jobs, and he says, "It doesn't make sense to hire smart people and tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do." And I think that goes along with what you're mentioning.
Yeah, it really does.
All right, so I'm excited to hear the benefits of this one. Why don't you share it with the group?
Yeah, so innovation really is the lifeblood of an organization. You never know what idea is going to come from where that will really change the future of a company. And it really is the ultimate source of competitive advantage. And so you need to have a company, when you have a company that's focused on those big problems, how to solve them, we're not going to have to worry about, are you going to do okay? You will thrive. For customers, we live in a world of trade-offs. So customers are always used to hearing the word or. For example, would you like to have the quality of a Mercedes Benz, or would you like to pay the price of a Yugo? Which, for our younger listeners on the phone, was this really crappy car back in the 90s. But what happened was, when companies come along with innovation, they get rid of or and they can add the word and. And that's what Toyota did. Toyota came in and said, we're going to give you the quality of a Mercedes Benz, of a car that will run over 200,000 miles. It's not going to be in the shop. You're going to trust it. And it's going to be a price you can afford. For a customer, that's a no-brainer. I love the word and that word and gave Toyota a competitive advantage that lasted over a decade. Because who doesn't want to have their cake and eat it too? So when companies are constantly asking what's better for customers, it's happening today. We see it in all the items we're getting. We don't even realize how much better we are because people are focused on how do they service better. For teams, yeah, we're going to talk about morale again. Yeah, and we've talked about it over and over again. And that's what it is. It's just feeling like you connect with the people. And that's a great part of it. But back to that entrepreneur thing, that feeling good about a great idea feels even better when I get to take a little bit of that home with me. We all have to work and we got to eat, we got to pay bills, but it makes a difference when I love what I'm doing, have a dream job. And that's what Agile is focused on is giving me a world where I connect to the people. I love what I do. And I even get to take some of the benefits that I'm providing back to the people in the organizations home with me.
That's awesome. Kevin, you have sold me on all four of the agile elements. And I said it earlier, Scrum Master and Daily Scrum, but throughout this whole webinar, we talked about the mindset of agile, not the focus of the ceremonies. So we talked about smaller bites, connecting with customers, the power of teams, and continuous learning. So I have been monitoring the Q&A, and it looks like there's not a lot that has come in, and there's some questions on the chat here. Just a little bit of, excuse me, some questions that have come in. Oof, sorry. So if you guys have questions, please go ahead and put it in the chat. You don't have to put it in the Q&A. But Kevin, somebody asked about the book that you talked about, The Joy Inc. by Menlo. And then we've had some comments from people that said that they were tired of doing rework, so it became a necessity in order for them to connect with the customer. So have you found that, Kevin, that connecting with the customer does help downplay rework?
Yes, absolutely. And it's funny because we talk about the benefits and how things fit together. And when you break the project into smaller pieces and you can see what they're doing, it helps with that, not having to do much rework because we're seeing as we go. And then it helps with that connection because you can show them what you're doing. But even if you can't show them what you're doing, like some kind of a prototype or something really helps to have that connection and involving them in the process the whole way through. It really does. And bless you guys for doing the rework. And obviously we're, how much we get to do, the absolute, absolute have to, or what they really needed. One of the big things I've seen too many times is that we deliver a product that's like half of what the customer needs and they don't get a phase two. And it's just sad.
Right. All right, we have a few questions coming in. What problems have you had instituting these kinds of changes in a really old, rigid organization, and how did you overcome it?
So it was really funny on my first agile transformation that like it was in IT and IT management just loved it. Like, this is going to make the world better. We're going to be so much better. We're going to save money, but our customers aren't going to like it. And it was so funny because agile is focused on serving your customers better. So we had a little bit of an issue with some of the people who are very traditionalist, and it was actually not the customers. It was inside of IT where, I need to have my paperwork. I need to have clarity about what we're doing. I need to have a document that shows me, that's the way I've always done my work. And the truth about that is that I find that the best answer is a couple things. One, you ask why. Like, why do I need the document? Because I need some security. I want to protect myself. I don't want to do this and then somebody comes back and screams at me that, why did you do it that way?
Mhm.
So we can still do the documents at the beginning of Agile. That makes you feel better. We can do the document, we can sign it off. We're just a little bit more flexible about maybe those documents are a lot smaller and we don't document as much. People talk about Agile as if it's a light switch, it's on or off. And it's not, it's a continuum. So as you're introducing these principles, one, get people excited, let them see what it can do. Two, do it so that they're implementing it. And three, be patient. You're going to move in an agile direction. I don't think I've worked with very many teams that when I talk to them about agile, they're like, oh, well, yeah, we're agile, but we're not really agile. Like, we're not perfect. We're not by the book. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to work in your environment. So just be patient with yourself.
Awesome. Okay, we have another question here. Do you ever find that the agile team empowerment approach is hard for middle management to deal with? And if so, how do you help them manage through that?
So there's a couple of different pieces for middle. So middle management's really afraid of agile for a simple reason. Like, that's my job. Like, I tell people what to do and then I track if they're doing it. Project managers have the same part. I worked with a company that had an agile PM and I'm like, what's an agile PM? I hadn't heard that before. And so there's no room for project managers. There's no room for managers. So what do I do? The truth is that you're going to do more, not less. We don't lack work. So I think one of the key things for middle managers right off the bat is to understand, what is my role in this new world? If I'm not tracking people, what am I doing? Well, now I have time to coach them and I have time to improve processes. I have time to think strategically about what we could do. I have time to connect with the customers and kind of think bigger than the team does. And when you go to a middle manager and you say, look, I'm going to give you more time to get the really important stuff that you need to be doing done. I'm not going to take your job away. You're not going to be less more important. You're going to add more value to the organization. I think that helps. And then being patient again along the way. We're going to learn as we go what our roles are, but providing clarity of what we think you should be doing helps, because the biggest question is that, am I going to still have a job? Is there still a place for me?
Mhm. All right, we are coming up at the end of the hour. That went super fast. I think we might have time for one more question. I just saw one come in. Let's see. If I want to start doing some agile stuff but want a bit of help, can you help me with that?
Yeah, the great news is that Colmy is here to help you. Okay, I mean, like, we have all kinds of different solutions at different sizes. And so there's a lot of references out on the website for blogs. You're welcome to just ping either Corey or I. We're here to help you out for questions. I tell everybody, whether you need us or not, there's a lot of free resources that we can point you through in the right direction. And if you need us later, we're there. But if not, whatever we do to help project management, it helps all of us be in a better place. So yes, absolutely feel free to reach out to us. And we've got social media posts out there and we're happy to talk to people.